Okay, good morning. It is Vav, the 6th of the month, and we always begin with a saying from our sages, Gadol Torah, greatest Torah, Yemevi Refuah, because it brings healing, the Kol Chai, to all living things. Who needs a Refuah?
Rivka Mina Bas Chaya Esther.
Refuah Shlema B'Korev.
Amen.
Anybody else? Well, I have some here. If I can find them. Yes. Tuvia ben Avram, Yair ben Adela, Mordechai Yehuda ben Chana, Yisrael ben Yomin ben Leah Gittel, Devora Leah bas Rusa Huva Liba, and Rivka Mina bas Chaya Esther. Okay, so let's start with our Hayom Yom as usual, and then we'll move into the Tanya. The Hayom Yom for today, excuse me, 6 Teves. Da, know the God of your fathers. Just the short digression, da, which is the word das, knowledge. Hasidus takes the word das and explains something very profound, which is that if you want to know the meaning of any word in Hebrew, look at the way it first occurs in the Torah. And in the Torah, the word das does not represent knowledge the way we think of it. It refers to the intimacy between Adam and Chava. So das is called iskashris, taking your mind and tying it to your heart and actions. So that's all there in know. Know the God of your fathers and serve him. This is the word avoida, serve him with a whole heart. So this is a pasuk in Chronicles. So the Fiduket Rebbe goes on and says, every sort of Torah knowledge and comprehension, even the most profound, must be expressed in avoda, i.e. service. The intellectual attainment must bring about an actual refinement and improvement of character traits, and must be translated into a deep-rooted inward attachment to God. There's the word das, attachment, tied together. All of which is what the Hasidic lexicon calls avoida. So if you want to know what avodas Hashem is, that's the expression, are you serving Hashem? Of course, I'm doing everything, right? Not exactly. Doing everything has to be in a manner of da, of tying it, correcting all of your 613 powers to his 613 mitzvahs, or at least one of them at a time, or some of them. But create that tie, that bind, that's called avoida. Okay. So we're talking today a little bit more about the avoida of shuva, returning. Because just to make a general principle, we've talked about, we're looking at this Tanya as an instruction book for how to become a Beinani. It's called Sefer Shel Beinani, and it is a book that teaches us how to become a Beinani. And Beinani is something that we posit, the Alter Rebbe posits, not everybody is holding there. So in a certain sense, everyone is to some extent on the outside of this place called Beinani, and the book is to help us come toward it. So everyone, in a certain way, no matter where you're holding, has an opportunity, I'll call it that way, for teshuvah, to return, to come back from wherever you're holding that's not 100% aligned with Hashem's will and what Hashem wants for you, and to bring yourself closer to this state called Beinani. So that's called shuva, to return, from the outside in. And he told us yesterday, and this will be elaborated on in a separate part of Likutei Amorim called the Geras HaTshuva, that there are two kinds of shuva. There's called teshuva nachoina, a proper shuva, which according to the Rambam is to regret in the heart and decision, remorse and decision not to repeat whatever the negative was. And then there's shuva gedola. And he says about shuva gedola, which means big, large shuva, that on the one hand, its result is that the iniquities that you did, the negative things which you did, actually are transformed into merits, because one gets so, at least in one way of looking at this, and this happens, a person gets so disgusted with himself or herself that becomes a motivating power to get out of the dirt, get out of the hole, get out of the prison, and break the bars and escape. So there's a power that comes from doing shuva, that comes from committing things which are absolutely negative. And the result of that, the Alter Rebbe says, and he's quoting Chazal, or not quoting Chazal, he's repeating what our sages have said. The result of that is that those iniquities become merits, because they were the proximate source of your power to come back to Hashem. So that's called Shuva Gedolah versus Shuva Nachoina, which is the first Shuva. Okay, and now we're beginning here. Vov begins on page in the lessons in Tanya. It begins here on page. I use the small lessons in Tanya for people who want reference. It's on page 121, middle of the page, and in this Likutei Amorim, it's on page Yud Beis, counting from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he's discussing here a particular avera, which is zera levatala, seed that's dispensed in vain. In other words, seminal seed that doesn't get utilized in Kedusha by being utilized in a man and woman coming together under the auspices of Kedushin, of a holy relationship. So he starts here, and by telling us, the life force, not the drop, but the life force that's in the drop, that comes out in the zera levatala, seed that's literally in vain, even though, I mean, you know, this is Er and Anon in the Bible. When we will learn about them. This was a sin, their sin. It's a big deal. But he says, even though it comes down and it descends in the 3 unclean klippas, we learned that there are 3 unclean, and there's a 4th klippa which is not unclean. It's a middle ground between the totally evil and Kedusha. And that middle ground, klippa noiga, that light soul, the soul that has some translucency to it, is the animal soul of a Jew. The animal soul as a Jew comes from klippas noiga. But when anybody, Jew, non-Jew, but we're here talking about a Jew, commits this act where the seed descends, and it's a levatala. It's completely in vain. It's not going to create offspring under the auspices of Kedushin. And even though it's now down in the dungeon, in the 3 klippas of Tameas, in the 3 unclean klippas, it can come up from there with a proper shuva, and with a great intentionality to return, excuse me, and a particularly auspicious time for this, and for any negative behavior that's not aligned with Hashem, which we call in the one word sin, but that's exactly what sin is. It's disalignment and disconnect with the intentionality of Hashem. So this particular time that Chazal have fixed, our sages have fixed for us in the prayer, a very auspicious time for coming back from there, coming and raising the life force that one may have lodged in the darkness and raising it up toward the light, is the time of Krishma Shalamita, as is known, Maharizal, from the Arizal, the Kabbalah of the Arizal. Umareim is Begamora, and this is actually hinted at, this notion of Krishma Alamita being an auspicious time for raising, bringing back whatever life force one has, Loyalenu has lodged in the negative forces during the daytime. And we're speaking here about a big one, but it can be a small one. It could be Lashon Hora. It could be inappropriate anger, on and on and on, lying, cheating, etc., etc. Anything that negates what the positive actions, thought, speech, and actions that Hashem wants you to do can be restored, brought back out of the darkness, the dungeon, I call it, through a proper tshuva, and particularly on Krishma Alamita. And this is Merumas B'Gemara. And this is hinted at in the Gemara, where the Gemara says, Kol HaKareh Krishma Alamitosoy, anyone who reads, calls out, literally, Shema Yisrael on his bed, this is Krishma Alamita, Ke'ila Oiches Cherev Shel Shtei Fios. It's as if he's slashing a double-edged sword, decapitating and killing the klippos, the negative energies. The Harek Gufos HaChatzonim, as he says, to kill the bodies of the external forces. Shenasa Levush, which those external forces had become for a period of time a life force. And now we're speaking back to this particular Vera that we're talking about, Zera Libatala. So the negative energy has been encased in this tipa, in this seminal drop. And with a proper shuva, that life force can come back and be restored to its place in Kedusha. This is the power of shuva. As the Alter Rebbe quoted from the Gemara yesterday, in a place where a Baal Shuva stands, a tzaddik cannot stand. Because, and he explained, because there's a force, a strength in the recoiling energy that comes from having been so low for far away. And I'm doing this like a tension on my hands, like with pulling something so far away, like a sling or a catapult, that when you let go, it goes way far forward. So that is not an experience known to a tzaddik, because a tzaddik has never done anything, as we'll learn later. It's not done anything that's negative. So in this case, one's negative energetics that have been encased in things which are not according to her can become springboards for returning, as is known. Therefore, since this can be restored, if this sin is not mentioned in the Gemara, in the Torah at all, amongst the bias asuras, amongst the forbidden relationships. First of all, there's no relationship here. It's a zera levatala. There's no feminine or receptacle for it at all. It's not mentioned at all. Even though it's much heavier, much stricter, much more serious than the forbidden relationships. And he'll say, and he's not going to say why, but I'll tell you, when looking for why. And the reason is that Zera Levatala is an example of complete waste, complete destruction, complete obliteration. There's nothing to be repaired, right? You just destroy it. So in that respect, and we're going to explore a paradox here, in that respect, it's, as he said, it's chayme mehen, it's worse than all the other sins that have to do with intimacy. I mean, those levels of intimacy which are forbidden in the Torah. The gadol avoinai, I'm back in the Tanya again on the third line down on 24. But the greatness of it's a great iniquity. The bechinis hagadlus v'riba hatuma, in terms of how much the size and the quantity and the quality of the tuma, of the negative energy, and the klippos and the shells, which is increased very, very much because of its utter devastation. There's nothing left to do anything positive with. It's gone. It's destroyed. So that's what happens. This is just an example, but it's a clear example of doing something that has no fixing. So in that respect, this is where we're holding one side of the paradox. It's much, much stricter, has no fixing. Even, and in that sense, it's more serious than all the other forbidden relationships. Rak, except Shababias Asuras, Bias Asuras has forbidden relationships has another problem though, which Zera Levatala, which seed in vain does not have. And what's the other problem in Bias Asuras, in forbidden relationships? When you have a forbidden relationship, there's an offspring. Even though the klippa is not as strong because it's not utterly waste, it has a persistent negative effect in that the chayas in the klippa of tuma is lodged in another person, and therefore it has a greater effect to such an effect that the chayas, the life force, can't return. And here's a little note on the side. Why? This is a note. Because because that seed has now taken place and been received in the feminine of klippa, the femininity of klippa, because the feminine and the masculine are both involved in a forbidden action. The feminine is mekabelas v'keletas achayas mihakadusha. So the feminine is receiving and congealing and gathering together this chayas, which came initially from kedusha, which masha'en came bezerah matala, which on the other hand, this seed in vain, she'en bechinas nukva v'klippa. It has no receptacle, so there's no feminine, there's no shell. It's just that the negative life force has been enclosed in this drop. As is known, as though to those who know the Chachmas Nestorim, the secret levels of the Torah. However, back to this Zerah Levatala, since there's no lasting effect out there in the world to carry on the negativity, i.e. a second generation is born from a Bia Asura, from a forbidden relationship. So therefore, if you do a shuva me'ava, right? Remember we spoke about shuva nechoina, a proper shuva, regret, and the decision not to do something, and a firm decision not to do it again. And then we spoke about the greater shuva, which is shuva from ava, where it's bound up in one's overwhelming yearning and desire to cling to Hashem. That's shuva ba'ava. So this zera levatala, if done from shuva ba'ava, with shuva from a love, kol kak, to such a great love, ad she'zoines nasuleb kazachias, that one's iniquities can become merits. And with this will be understood the saying of our sages. It's saying, what is a iniquity, a fault, literally, a mistake, a maves, a bad thing, that can't be fixed? One that can't be fixed is one who has a relationship that has a persistent outcome, being a mamzer, a child from this kind of relationship. Then, even if you do a great shuva me'ava, kol kach, to such an extent, you can't bring that life force back to kedusha, because it's already descended and became embodied and is captive in the offspring from this relationship. And this life force has become captive in something else, the child of the offspring, which is flesh and blood. Okay, that's today's time. I've got to ask you, particularly those who have been around this class for a while, what does this accomplish for us today in terms of two things? And I'll see if we can get anywhere. One, its relationship with the general theme of the Tanya, which is that everybody can become a Beinoni. All right. And what does it accomplish in terms of our takeaway, what we're going to take away from this? Any ideas? Thoughts? Yes, iPhone, who is
Sorry, it's Yanka.
Okay, great.
I don't have a thought. I just was wondering about people today that don't know, that they should have a get, and
Get, yeah,
they have a child with somebody else, and that child is a mamzeris, but
right.
it was unknown. They're like, what's like a tinuk,
Tina Shanishba Ben Umes, the
right?
small child was captured among the nations. Yeah, that's called a shoygeg. There are two different categories. There's mazid and shoygeg, deliberate and unintentional. And he's talking here about deliberate sins. Unintentional sins are, well, like you said, you didn't know it was forbidden, right? The one that's classically brought in the Gemara a lot is in Gemara Shabbos, where we learn these things from, is you did something because you didn't know it was Shabbos, and you did something which is those things which are not mazid, which are not deliberate, which are shogeg. Those things can be repented from, and the chayas can be returned. Here, this one, even though you didn't do it intentionally, right? Let's talking about here the mamzer.
Right.
You left a klippa in the world,
right?
You left it, and there's nothing that can be done about that klippa that you left in the world. So that is something that you did. You did it b'shoigeg, okay? But he's talking here, how can you take the actions that you've done, the thoughts, speeches, and actions, what can you do with them? And this maybe will segue into a little bit about why this helps in terms of Tanya. That the thought, speech, and actions that you've done generally are if assuming there are some negative ones. So there are two ways of doing the negative. One, you did it deliberately, and two, you did it undeliberately. You have to know that the path toward Beinani, the path toward being someone who's living totally aligned with Hashem, and whose negative energies or results of negative energies have been erased, is there. It's there for you. The fact that you may have done this thing and left something in that object is always going to be is an object that came from the Gimel Klippas of Teves. It's just there's nothing you can do about that. But you can change your course of action going forward, and going forward from here, you can be something different. The other, the one that's you can do something about what you've actually done. That's something where there is no negative result in the world that's permanent. And for instance, you've said something bad about something. You've done lashon hora. You can rectify that by by number one, admitting regret and sorrow, and a decision never to do it again with the one that you had the relationship with, and that can transform a relationship, right, from a relationship that was one of negativity to one of positivity. So you're able to transform that, and that's available, except in a situation like this where you can transform your behaviors from now on, but all he's saying is there's nothing you can do about what happened out there. Sivia. Hello.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up because I was really wondering why this is here, right here in the Tanya. And the only thing that I get is that reflecting back on the previous chapter or chapters when it's talking about what happens in relation to less serious things in Klippas Noga, and the whole idea of things going into the impurity in the areas that you do have control over, and it's that it's easy to gloss over, and this just gives an image of how serious that is.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
Didn't we say yesterday that sometimes death is the only way to get true forgiveness?
Yes. Misa mechaper. Death atones. But we don't, we didn't say it's the only way. Death does atone. And we look forward in the Alter. I don't remember if he brought it here or not, but it's brought in many Hasidus. We look forward to the time when the Ruach HaTuma, the spirit of uncleanliness, will be totally dissolved from the earth. and with that, death will be resolved. So we did mention that misa mechaperes, death does atone, but not that we don't want to walk away thinking here that death is the only thing that atones, right? We want to walk away here from knowing that we have the ability to actually turn around the negative effect, except in a case like this where that effect, is gone. It's out there. There's nothing you can do about that. But we have an opportunity all the time to turn around situations in such a way that I can change a relationship. I mean, think about this. Just simple. That's the one that comes to mind. Just change a relationship from enmity to companionship, to partnership, those kinds of things, like in business. You always have that opportunity, except in a situation like this, and you don't go into any death and that final thing to have your.
But I couldn't see that changing the fact that a mamzer's in the
No,
world.
it doesn't. It doesn't.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't change. Now, what about the mamzers? I don't know. Is that what you're asking?
No.
No.
The mamzer isn't the one who created the sin.
Right. That life force, excuse me, stays in the Gimel Klippos of Teves, as he just told us. That life force is trapped there in the Gimel Klippos of Teves until, and which he doesn't say, but he said it earlier, until such time that all those klippos are dissolved. And when all those klippos are dissolved, then that trapped life force does go back to Kedusha. See, Misa, death is the ultimate tuma. And as a result of which, there's a corpse that stays in the ground. There's nothing you can do about that corpse. There's nothing that you can do about that mamzer being a mamzer until such time when all the darkness and all the concealment is revealed, and then the life force will all rise, and that's called resurrection. When the dead, and I would think, I'm just thinking, in my category, the mamzer would be like that also. I'm just saying this on my own, because the dead are going to become alive. And this mamzer is carrying around a dead piece of godly energy called one of the three unclean klippos. That it will rise up at the time when the resurrection occurs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a mistake to think that the only way I can do Shuva is to die. No. As long as you're in a body and your body is capable of action, or at least thought, I mean, the Shuva in your mind, you can change things. And that's, I think Sivi was getting at this also. That's the positive message that is maybe, one can say this, but at least contextually, it seems to provide a reason why this is here. That you should know that in the majority of cases, you can turn around that life force from being momentarily in the captivity of the klippa and remove it and restore it to Kedusha. Can someone please convey this to the class?
Just did.
Oh, huh?
You just did.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, this is good. I'm glad we're talking about this.
Well, if you can hear me, but you really didn't cover that, so I don't know if you
What? I don't hear you. What'd you say?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you now.
I'm just trying to ask the child himself, not the vessel that's left after, but the actual child. Like, what's the implications for the actual child?
What's the implication for the child, the mamzer? I mean, I'm not going to say, because I would be venturing into territory that I don't really know anything about. My knee-jerk reaction would be, the mamzer hasn't done anything, right? So he's on his own to do and establish his own relationship with Hashem, and he's carrying a klippa with him. But every moment that he or she thinks, thought, speech, and action, thinks, speech, or does something positive, that he or she is restoring that klippa, bringing it back. If you ask the bottom line question, can a mamzer serve Hashem and have that and his shuva and everything be accepted? Absolutely. But what his state is spiritually, I don't know.
Is he not? He's not considered Jewish, or what? Like,
no. Oh, is he considered Jewish?
Right,
I don't think so. But I don't know exactly the halacha. Maybe somebody on the call does.
They're definitely Jewish. I do know that Rebbeim today, if they have somebody who's a Baal Tshuva, trying to become a Baal Tshuva and discovers they are
Mamzer.
a mamzer, they go to utmost lengths trying to make sure, see if there's something that they can invalidate that relationship or the marriage before.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know. If anyone on the call either knows more or would like to do a little research, that's a good question.
But
So
they can marry
I
other mamzeres.
right.
Oh, interesting.
All right. But his
Why-
question, bottom line is he Jewish in full? And we'll have to do a little research. Maybe I'll ask today if I have an opportunity to.
Yeah, it's
to
my
see.
understanding that Jewish. We had a mamzer born in our community in the Hartford area,
And
and the Rebbitzin told me, in no uncertain terms, that it was a girl. She's 100% Jewish. That's what she told me, and was definitely a mamzer.
okay, so we'll take that.
I have a question about the category of forbidden relationships. When you're teaching it, you say because a child could be conceived from one of these situations, but what about when there is no child? I mean, one doesn't get pregnant every single time.
Uh-huh. So that's still not, it's not Zerul of Atala because the intentionality was child. It's not waste. It just didn't work out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's still a forbidden relationship.
Well, yeah, but that's the forbidden relationship.
For different reason than for the fact that it could create a child.
Right. So it's in the forbidden relationship category, but it's not in the category of Zerul of Atala.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else?
I was late to give the refuah shleimas. Do you want me I'll wait till tomorrow to do it?
No, say it now.
Okay. Refuah shlema for Yehuda Skolda Basilisa Hana, Chaim Yaakov Zev ben Sarah, Yosef Yitzhak ben Lior, Shoshana Bas Hana, Gary Robertson of George, Yaakov Shaul ben Hana Miriam, Yehudit Gila Bas Rachalea.
Refuah Shlema recorded. You know, there's a power in 10, and I think we have 10 here. We have more than 10.
We have 11.
11. So good. The power of 10 should actually act extra power refuah to all of those who need refuah.
Thank you, Amen. Thank you.
Okay. See you tomorrow. Yemir Hashem.
What was the What was the takeaway?
Oh, the takeaway. Okay, go ahead.
I mean, actually, the takeaway for me is going to be which I just don't do. I just have never been able to add it, is saying Shema at bedtime.
Okay, that's a good one. It's practical.
So, it sort of pushes me in that direction. So that's one takeaway. But then again, the whole explanation seems to have to do with males and not females, right? This is not a female thing at all.
Right, but it's an example. And I guess my takeaway would be, except in really rare, extreme situations, one can always come back to and deepen one's relationship with Hashem. One can always remove oneself from the pit of darkness and transform darkness into light, except with very few exceptions. And since those very few exceptions don't apply too much, and I would guess that of all of us here, at least 99% of our actions, if not more, are rectifiable. And so knowing that should give us a little bit of kayach to go out there and rectify not only ourselves, but our situation, every situation we have with other people all day long.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Okay.
Also the Shema that was mentioned, that could be added to the post that Elisheva Kirschenbaum, I'm sorry, I can't remember her new name, put in that, you know.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'll add that. Hiya, Elisheva. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. Okay. Tomorrow, Emir Hashem.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay.